Hello. Today is Friday of the third week of Advent. We have lit the three candles. You can't see the third one very well. Let's try to do this. Can you see that third one is lit? It's glowing a little bit. We're continuing our story of Bartholomew's passage. Today's chapter is titled Lessons. The realization that they were both from the same tribe of Judah had kept Jotham and Bartholomew talking late into the night. They were brothers, Jotham had said, because somewhere in the past they had shared some great-great-great-grandfather or such. They vowed to always treat each other as brothers should, and to pray for each other on all occasions. "Do you see that strange star?" Bartholomew asked as they stared out the window. "Do you see how it seems to lead in one direction?" "Yes, I do," Jotham said excitedly. "I have been watching it for many nights." "Then we will both watch that star from now on and pray that Jehovah will use it to guide us back to each other some day." Jotham thought this a grand idea, and finally they lay down to sleep. Bartholomew awakened just before dawn with the rest of the boys. Jotham was still sound asleep. Bartholomew tried kicking his friend lightly several times to wake him, but Jotham only rolled over. Finally Bartholomew whispered, "Jotham, get up!" The other boys in the dormitory looked crossly at Bartholomew for talking, and he hoped he was not earning another spanking from the rabbi, but he couldn't let his friend sleep his way into trouble. After all, Andrew had risked his such a fate to help him on one of his first morning. "It is time for morning prayers," Bartholomew whispered. Jotham didn't move, but from under the blankets he said, "I don't feel like going to morning prayers." Bartholomew gasped. "You must go. Everyone must go." Still Jotham didn't move, so Bartholomew tried a different tack. Bending down next to Jotham's ear, he said in a low voice, "The rabbi will be most displeased if you do not attend prayers." And as he said this, he patted Jotham's bottom in a mock spanking. Instantly, Jotham's eyes shot open, then his whole body was up and out of bed and dressed. After morning prayers, during which Bartholomew asked Jehovah to watch after his new friend Jotham, and a breakfast of corn mush, during which Jotham sat with Bartholomew at the head of the table as a son of David, Jotham helped Bartholomew with his chores. Bartholomew was glad for the help, because there were still many urns that had not been moved from the furnace room, since everyone's schedules had been disrupted by Decca. The sun had moved an hour across the sky when the two boys carried the last of the urns out of the furnace room. They were walking into the scribe's room with Bartholomew walking over to the scribe's room with Bartholomew in the lead, carrying the top of the urn and Jotham carrying the bottom, when Bartholomew suddenly slipped. The urn went crashing to the ground and broke into thousands of pieces. Just then the rabbi came walking across the compound, and at the sound of the crash, he turned to look. Bartholomew looked back and forth between the urn and the rabbi, his face looking like that of a cornered rabbit. "Rabbi," he stuttered, "forgive me. I slipped in the dirt, and the urn just—" The rabbi held up his hand to interrupt Bartholomew. He looked slowly from the broken urn pieces to the panic on the boy's face. "Son of David," he said slowly, "why are you so frightened? Is it because of the lesson you had to learn last night?" Bartholomew nodded his head. The rabbi grasped the boy's shoulder and said softly, "Bartholomew, the punishment you received last night was for willfully breaking our rules. This," he said, sweeping his hand over the shattered urn, "this was an accident. We do not punish men or boys for making mistakes, only for acting in disobedience. Bartholomew stopped quivering and even managed a little smile, and just then Nathan walked up. "Jotham, it is time to leave," he said. Bartholomew and Jotham looked at each other, both knowing they did not want to part, both knowing it had to be if Jotham were ever going to find his family. "Yes, Nathan," Jotham said finally, "I will gather my things." With Bartholomew's help, Jotham gathered his new clothes, a blanket the dormitory keeper had given him, and a new food bag. Just before they left the dormitory, Bartholomew handed Jotham the walking stick he had been carving. "Here," he said, "I want you to have it. It is my favorite, and it would honor me if you would use it." Jotham blushed, searching for the right words of thanks. "May your father," he started, but then stopped, embarrassed. "May the God of your father," he started again, "give you peace and rest in your new home." As they walked toward the front gate, Bartholomew told Jotham all about Jericho. "I'm sure you'll meet Silas," he said. "He's a most wonderful friend and a man of great importance, yet he will treat you as if you are the important one." "Sounds like Nathan," Jotham said. "Yes, Silas is very much like Nathan." They found the man who had saved them both from the clutches of evil, and Bartholomew asked if he could speak to Nathan before he left. "Can it not wait until my return?" Nathan asked. Bartholomew's shoulders fell. "Yes, I suppose it can wait." Bartholomew's face changed from impatience to compassion. "Oh, we can spare a minute or two. What is it, boy?" Bartholomew thought for a moment to put his words in the right order, and then said, "I am very confused. Last night the rabbi spanked me just because I talked during the meal. And then this morning I broke a whole big urn, and he didn't even care. How am I to do right when he is mean and spanks me for no reason, and does not punish me for great wrong?" Nathan knelt down in the sand next to the boy. "Bartholomew," he said, "did not the rabbi warn you on many occasions not to talk during meals?" Bartholomew nodded glumly. "And did you obey those warnings?" "Well," Bartholomew said slowly, dragging it out to give himself time to think, "I wanted to obey, and I tried to obey, but sometimes I'd just forget. It wasn't my fault." "Bartholomew," Nathan said patiently, "our actions are our own to choose. I do not remember ever seeing you forget to eat a meal, or to go swimming, or to carve on that fine walking stick. If you are able to remember to do the things that are important to you, then you are able to remember the things that are important to the rabbi." "But it is such a foolish rule. Why shouldn't we talk?" "Foolish or not, it is a rule. And if you want to be a part of this community, you must follow its rules, just as I must follow the rules I do not agree with." Bartholomew felt as if his insides were going to burst. He knew that Nathan's words were right, but he didn't like it one bit. "Think of it this way," Nathan said. "You are able to make friends with people you have good reason not to like. Why not try to make friends with the rules you do not like?" "How do you make friends with a rule?" "By making friends with the one who is the creator of all rules and all authority, even Caesar himself." Bartholomew thought about that. "Jehovah?" he asked finally. "Yes," Nathan answered, "Jehovah. It is an honor to God when we honor those who are in authority over us, even if those authorities rule foolishly or maliciously." Bartholomew thought he could probably talk about things for a very long time, But Nathan stood and said it was time for them to leave. Standing by the main gate of Qumran, where men and boys still worked to rebuild the broken down walls, Bartholomew watched as Nathan once again left him. He waved goodbye to his new friend Jotham. "Shall I ever see you again?" he said softly to Jotham. Then he added, "Hurry back, Nathan. I shall miss you." And then he turned to go back to work. As he carried the heavy urns back and forth, Bartholomew wished he again had the help of his friend Jotham. After work, he played Dunk the Donkey with the other boys, and then taught Andrew his favorite strategies in King's Ransom. At dinner, he kept perfectly quiet during the meal and listened closely to the lesson. The next morning, Bartholomew again sat silently through the meal, and he decided if he could do it twice, then he could do it always. He noticed that the rabbi's assistant had returned, and he wondered where he had gone and what he had done. Later, Bartholomew was again carrying his urns to the furnace when an alarm went up from the watchtower. "Rider! Coming fast from the north!" the watchman yelled. As always, everyone stopped what he was doing to await word. "It is a friend," the watchman proclaimed finally, and Bartholomew hoped it was Nathan. "Torquay, from Jericho." The name meant nothing to Bartholomew, but all the monks seemed to know who it was and rushed to the gate. A moment later, a very tall man riding a very tired horse raced into the compound. The rider dismounted and allowed the horse to guzzle water from a trough. The man was out of breath and gasped great lungfuls of air as he spoke. I bring news," he said, pausing to take several more breaths. Then he looked into the eyes of the monks gathered around him and said 5 words that stopped Bartholomew's heart as surely as a sword in the chest. "Nathan of Qumran is dead," he said. And once again, Bartholomew felt as if the whole world had fallen out of the sky. Sometimes rules don't make any sense to us, but to those who made the rules, to those in authority over us, the rules are there for a very good reason. Just because we don't understand or like those reasons doesn't mean we can ignore the rules. Bartholomew hasn't yet figured out why it's wrong to talk during meals, but he has figured out how to obey the rules. He has finally figured out that by obeying those in authority over him, he is obeying God. In Romans it says, "Everyone must submit himself to the governing authorities, for there is no authority except that which God has established."